Acadia After Dark is a horror podcast, and as such, may not be appropriate for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Acadia After Dark podcast. I am the Reverend Redbeard, and this week I am joined by a local business, the Emporium Spooky Goods and More LLC, run by Kaddie and Nick. Hey guys, how you doing tonight?
Doing all right. How are you?
Right.
We're doing well over here. I am super excited to have you on the show. I've been I've been following you on Instagram and Facebook for a while now, and I just love all the stuff that you've been doing up there, and you have such a wide variety of stuff. It's really astounding. You guys want to introduce yourselves to the audience? Just give them a little rundown of yourselves and what you've been up to.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Nick Iammatteo. I was originally born in Long Island, New York, but I've ended up living in Florida, and then I lived in North Carolina, which is where I met Kaddie. I've been an actor for a good chunk of my life, and that's how Kaddie and I met doing a play. Where we moved up here to Maine in May of 2021 because we had visited a couple times and we just fell in love with it, and so it was we started working on the shop around January 2024. It was about when we started working on it, and we have made the dream a reality in September. So that's kind of my short introduction.
Yeah, and I'm Kaddie Sharpe. Lots of people know me as, and because I actually used to work at WDABI Channel 5 for the last few years, and so yeah, no, I am originally from North Carolina. Yeah, as Nick mentioned, he and I met. I lived in Charlotte for a little while. I lived all around North Carolina, and he and I met doing a play together, and yeah, just did a lot of theater together, and got married a few years later, and have been together for a while. And yeah, no, I was looking to get out of North Carolina. I had already lived everywhere I wanted to in North Carolina, and I lived in Colorado for a little bit growing up, and Virginia and stuff like that when my parents split up. And so I had already moved around a little bit. And then Nick and I, is actually right before the pandemic, we were like, look, we've talked about moving out of the state. It's getting hotter and more overcrowded in North Carolina. Where would we want to go? And the first thing that Nick said is, I really liked Maine. And I'm like, well, I really liked Maine too. So we started researching it. And I actually have a friend up here in Maine that I grew up in North Carolina with. She had actually moved in middle school to North Carolina from South Portland, where she grew up. So we became quick friends and have kept in touch all these years. So I asked her, I was like, look, where I'm from the South, like, am I crazy to want to move to Maine? And she's like, no, you should come check it out. So we did. And we were like, yep, nope, we definitely want to live in Bangor, and made the move. And yeah, we love it here. It's definitely, it reminds me a lot of what North Carolina used to be, just a little bit more low key and everything, and having the mountains and the ocean in one state. And yeah, but no, Nick and I are lifelong horror fans, as we found out, getting to know each other and getting raised on horror movies and all sorts of, sci-fi stuff and everything. And we've been going to conventions over the years and just doing a lot of really cool stuff with films and everything like that. And, of course, being actors, have actually got to act in a lot of really neat projects and stuff like that. And we decided that we wanted to have a shop for people who are like that. We meet a lot of friends who were into it, and they wanted a t-shirt or they wanted stuff for their house. We have, it's Halloween all year long at our house. And so our collection has really come from us going to craft fairs and to conventions and just places like all around. And so we know that there are people out there that want the same kind of stuff. So we're like, look, we've met all these people that make cool things, or seeing cool companies and artists that do that. Like, let's put it all in one space for people to actually go and pick up that kind of stuff. But what was one thing that we really had in North Carolina too is we actually had an old theater, which I see that Maine is full of, which is awesome.
Oh yeah. We love those up here.
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, when I worked for Channel 5, that was one of my favorite things about so when we moved up here, we both had work from home software jobs, and I really I hated it. So after a few months, I quit my job, and then I went and picked up a part-time job at Channel 5, and then worked my way up to reporting because I ended up I went to college for radio. So I was like, all right, I'm getting back into broadcasting. This is cool. I love doing this. But I found it was like one of the best things I could have done for moving to a new state, because they just send me wherever. And I'm like, all right, well, I got to go, right. I got to go to court somewhere. I've got to go to this event. I've got to go do this thing in this place. And I get to learn my way around the state. I get to learn about all these cool little pockets around the state. I get to learn new ghost stories around the state. So of course, right, I've got to see all these gorgeous theaters, the Criterion and the Colonial and the Grand and stuff like that. So in North Carolina, we had something like that in Durham called the Carolina Theater, where they had a performance space on one side and a couple movie theaters on the other. And so they actually would have the retro film series. So every other Friday they had a double feature, and they would just show, blast from the past kind of movies. Nice. They had a horror film festival. They had anime. They got all sorts of stuff. So we've always loved getting to see these movies that either we've never heard of or we've never had a chance to see or see on the big screen. Yeah. So we learn about those, and then those become like our new favorite things. And so we're like, I want to go find a zombie t-shirt. Where do I find a zombie t-shirt? Well, now you can find that at our shop. So
yeah, that's a pretty incredible business model. That's a fantastic story too, from start to finish, how you guys like met and got together and everything, and then progress into where you're at now and everything like that. That's so cool and like serendipitous to have two people from North Carolina and New York, then you find each other and you find a home here in the Pine Tree State, where your website had mentioned it, that Maine kind of got its like horror, it got put on the map for horror because of Stephen King. And I find it's like so common that that's kind of how a lot of people bond over horror in general, is like through his stories and things like that. But then to see, the two of you that obviously have an appreciation for like all things horror, I'm sure. And your shop does a really good job of just covering so many bases. Like, I'm impressed with all of the stuff that you post. When you post a new screenshot, like every other day, it's like always some item from some movie that I was like, oh, I saw that like 20 some odd years ago. And it's so cool to see. What I know that you said, like, where do you get those things and everything like that, but what really like showed you that this was something that you could do and you could find a way to like make it work here? Because I feel like you've just come up on a year, right? Or you're pretty close to it.
We've been open the physical
since September.
Yes, we opened the physical.
6 months.
Yeah, about 6 months. We unofficially started in August when we hosted a showing of Burnt Offerings over at the Criterion in Bar Harbor in August. So, because even by that point, we weren't even 100% sure we'd even get a physical space. So our initial model was like, all right, if we can't find a space, we'll host movie nights at different theaters that'll have us, and we'll set up our table of stuff and, see how that goes.
So awesome.
So we did Burnt, and we were like dedicated to like finding the deep cut horror movies that we love. So we did Burnt Offerings and the Criterion in August, and then we this September we showed for the 30th anniversary, we showed In the Mouth of Madness at the Grand in Ellsworth. Nice. So stuff like that. To answer your initial question, which was I'm now forgotten. It's just like, what was the again? Like, where do you?
I was just saying how what showed you kind of that you could like make this business work, because it seems like it's a big idea, and the way that you guys are like you're a community space. You're engaging the horror community around Bangor and around Maine.
It's a kind of a couple things, honestly. So we kind of had this idea many years ago when we were still in North Carolina. And again, thinking the same thing. It's like, look, we have this whole house full of really cool stuff. And we'd have people come over, they're like, oh my gosh, like you have these really cool signed posters, or you have these really neat things on your mantle, or, your coffee cups are really neat. And I, noticed, I was like, well, I got this at one convention. I got this other thing at a craft fair. I met a chick down the road, who does these really neat coasters. And so it was just kind of this collection of things. And I got to thinking, it's like, well, I wonder if you could make a shop like that, if that would actually work. Well, funny enough, when we were in North Carolina and I first started thinking of that, I started researching it, and I went on the internet and I was like, oh, somebody's already doing this. So somebody in North Carolina, in not too far from where we were, because we were right outside of Raleigh, and there was a chick in Durham who had a place called Little Shop of Horror. And I was like, well, hi, I had no idea. So we go in, and it was a very small space. But she had a kind of a neat collection of some things. And so she had kind of the idea of what I had, but what I wanted to do was even bigger than that. And then again, it was just kind of a neat location. So it's like, okay, you have this store, then down the street, you have that theater space that we would go, watch these really neat films or even discover these new films anyway. And so it kind of was a culmination of things. So when we moved up here, and again, it wasn't for a couple years after we were just working our daily grind one way or the other, that when I was going around for reporting, I would pull over, I'd fill up the car with gas. I see somebody walk out with a Friday the 13th sweatshirt. Seriously, like the next day, I go to Hannaford for something. Somebody has a Pennywise, shirt on, or I see somebody's car, that has like a Freddy Krueger bumper sticker. And it got me thinking, I was like, and obviously we immediately go to Stephen King, but there's so many other things here. And then, getting to learn about the ghost stories of Maine, during even ghost tours that the Historical Society does, through my acting, because I actually did one of the ghost tours with True North Theater. So I got to play not a fortune teller, but anyway, just like a spiritual medium. I got to play a spiritual medium, and I got to tell the tale of Mary Howe and Demarascata and stuff like that. So getting to learn about all of that, but then also I'm a huge Dark Shadows fan. And so when I moved up here, now Dark Shadows was not filmed in Maine, but it's in the fictitious, town of Collinsport, Maine. And their big civilization that they would go shopping and everything like that is Bangor. And there's not a single Dark Shadows, nothing across the whole state. And
Which seems crazy, right? Because you would think that we would have capitalized on that.
Right. I mean, because that's the thing. It's like, even though they didn't film it there, you just kind of get that feeling anyway, like in the beginning and the opening of that show, and like the waves crashing on the bluffs, and the kind of eerie music, it already kind of sets the tone that if you go to places at Bar Harbor at the special time, or if you even go to Bucksport or something on a foggy day, you're like, oh yeah, I feel that. I feel that feeling. I feel that kind of eerie feeling, and something could be totally looking over my shoulder, from the crazy, graveyard that I know is right behind me on a mountaintop or something. So, so when we really were kind of thinking of it, it's like, what, this is actually a really good place for that. With all of the things like coming together, besides just, the obvious, the obvious answer of Stephen King. There's so much in Maine that just makes it like, a great place for something like that. And then again, same thing like what you were talking about. There are plenty of people that we have. It's hit or miss, like Dark Shadows. We either have the people that come into our shop and they're like, oh my God, Dark Shadows, I love that show, I have to have that t-shirt. And they're like, and I'm in Maine, I totally love that. And then I have a lot of people who I'm like, do you know about Dark Shadows? They're like, nope. And I have to explain to them, I'm like, this is this, and this is this, that this is actually based in a, fictitious town in Maine and everything. I'm like, I had no idea.
Yeah. So
So
a fun fact about that, and this is something I know from when I was like a kid, because I actually went and visited. So in the opening sequence there, they show that shot during the opening credits. They show that shot of that mansion. That mansion actually is a real place in Maine. The show wasn't shot there, but somebody did use a photo of a mansion from Maine in that opening sequence.
oh, interesting.
Yeah, which is weird because it's like, why didn't they bother to just, give Maine the
Yeah.
business? Like, I don't know. But that was something that I remember from when I was a kid because, my mom was a huge fan of that show. And so we went there when I was really young. And I remember seeing the front gates and everything. It was pretty wild. It's cool.
That's awesome. Yeah,
yeah.
even just being able to just go and see it. I know people that would be banging down the gates for that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's like Stephen King's house, around Halloween, that place becomes like, party central because all these people want to go and take photos out in front of it and everything like that. And,
Dude, we live right around the corner from the King house, and it's like that pretty much all year long. I mean, it's slowed down a little bit in the winter. But yeah, I mean, especially now that it's that the roads are clear and everything, when we go and walk our dogs and stuff like that. Oh yeah, it is hopping. Cars from all around the country are pulling in and out, taking the pictures and stuff like that. So
I wonder how he's got to feel about that, like.
Yeah, I know he's not here very often, but he has definitely been here a few times in the last 6 months. And yeah, I wonder that. I'm like, oh, so I wonder what that's like. Do they just keep the blinds closed all the time? I guess they must have,
It makes me wonder how long it is until he happens to be going through Bangor and he sees your little shop. And then who knows? Maybe you guys could have a brush with him, and wouldn't that be fantastic?
Oh, it'd be amazing.
And get a picture. Make sure you get a picture.
It would make. I know it would almost feel like it's almost be like getting the blessing from the Godfather. Basically.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
To our shop to say hello, take a picture, bought a bumper sticker, and said, "Great job, guys! Keep up the good work."
Right,
all right,
exactly.
Thanks, Stephen King. Then it would feel like we finally made it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. You could just retire happy at that point.
Yeah.
We've done everything we could do.
Right.
I get you there. Absolutely. It's such a cool thing, though. I mean, I really like the whole model for your business is really cool, because when I look at your inventory of stuff online, it's just so many like coffee mugs that from movies that I wouldn't have thought anybody would have seen, t-shirts. Where do you find this stuff? Do you just like buy it like in various vendors online or something, or have you found like a better way of discovering some of this stuff? Because some of it is like so like I don't know how to put it. It's like it's almost like stuff that I wouldn't have seen anywhere aside from maybe like one of those like novelty shops in like Hollywood or something, maybe. But some of it is so cool, and I was just wondering, how do you even find this sort of stuff?
So it's a combination of things. So we've been, even before we ever opened the shop, we've been going to horror conventions for about 10 years, give or take. And so we, in different places, different states. So you get to meet a lot of different vendors that way. So really, even those years, we would just, see this cool stuff, and we would get a business card, and we would just kind of keep up with that vendor. Like the very first vendor we ever met was Amy, who makes the coasters that we carry. So we just kept in touch with her all these years. And so there was some of that. Some of it was just, and then some of it was some online work. Once again, just, stuff that we just liked that we weren't even looking for a shop. And then once we got really serious about it, in January 2024, when we started doing research, we just started really doubling down on like just the research aspect, because we did not want to get all of our stuff from the same place. So it was spent a lot of time online. And the funny thing, you mentioned Instagram, Instagram, Facebook, because you know how those sites are. You like one t-shirt vendor and it recommends 7 more.
Yeah, that's true.
Normally
really
it's
thought of
annoying,
that.
but it actually kind of helped us this time. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that.
and like we were able to find like this one guy based out of Oregon who makes these really cool shining shirts, So like, okay, we'll get some shirts from that guy. And we found another company in Wyoming just through research who does some wholesale, but not for anybody, just anybody. But we went to them and pitched what we were trying to do, and they're like, "Oh, okay, absolutely." So it's just a combination of just life experience of conventions and just a lot of research. We were and some just asking around. When we first opened, we didn't have as many local artists, but once we opened the shop, word spread amongst the local artist community because we really did want to carry stuff made by people here in Maine too. So once we got the word out, a lot of people then started coming to us, which was just great. So we carry a lot of stuff now from people who live in the state of Maine.
Oh, that's really cool.
So yeah,
some local vendors too.
Absolutely,
That's really,
yeah. Which we love our local vendors. They do such great work, and we're happy to be one of the places that we can give them a home. And that was the thing when Katie mentioned, when we started doing this, we wanted to have the widest possible variety of stuff that we could offer. So. And so, yeah, it's kind of how it happened. It's just a combination of different things.
That's really cool. That's awesome. I think it's really awesome that you've managed to find like such a niche thing and like putting so much of it in one place is just such a cool idea. And that's a store that honestly, I think that this state really enjoys horror to the degree that they do. You can kind of see it whenever we have like a horror convention or a shop like yours pops up. Like the community around it really rallies around it to try and make it more than, just a flash in the pan. So it's so cool that you guys are doing this. While we're on the subject of like, horror in general, what's some of your favorite horror movies or like, favorite pieces of memorabilia you guys have come across? You're big fans of the conventions and everything. So what are you looking out for?
Good question. I mean, it really just depends on the ones that we go to. We actually just went down to one in Atlanta in late February. I mean, in that one, we really were like, oh my gosh, we have to go to that one because of some of the folks that were going to be there. We got to meet a bunch of people from Return of the Living Dead.
Cool.
And so just having that many people from the movie at the same place at the same time, including the Tar Man, we're like, oh man, we totally have to go to that. And we, like I said, so with us getting to learn more and more, I mean, and it's just been it's been a journey on our own too, for the last several years of us just going down, like the deep cut rabbit hole, that we've gone through. And so that's how we really got into it, like, especially all sorts of international horror, but even Italian, like 70s, 80s Italian horror. And so we really got into Giallo and, Dario Argento and Lucio Fulci and stuff like that. So Lucio Fulci's movie Zombie, that he did, the guy who is the like iconic zombie on the poster was coming to Atlanta from Italy for that convention. So we said we have to go. We drove down there. We drove like right into this giant snowstorm that was coming and that we were trying to outrun. And about 45 minutes, I got to like Palmyra. I was like, "Whoa, it is pouring snow, but we have committed and we're going to be fine." So knuckled the next 6 hours, just so we could get down there and be like, "Hey, you, Mr. Guy, this is from the zombie movie."
Ottaviano Della Luca, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Luca.
Yeah, who was a really sweet guy too. So
that's so cool.
But
usually those ones are the ones that mean the most too, because it's like how many people would really drive that far down to see an Italian movie from the 70s, honestly. But you guys made that huge trip and everything. I'm sure that must have made his day.
Oh yeah, and that's things. So you mentioned like some of our favorite stuff. So we do have autographed movie posters, on one wall of our shop that are
for sale.
For sale. And that's one of my favorite things, because we collected all those signatures ourselves from all these different conventions. Every poster has a story behind it.
It's gonna be kind of hard to part with some of those, though.
Well, we have our own private collection at home too. So, most every poster you see up there, we've probably got one of our own too.
Right.
So it's not too, but we want, we want, we want those to find a home. We want, because we know not everybody can go to all these conventions because they're not as crazy as we are. But no, but it's like, it's, and she had two different questions. One was like, what were some of our favorite horror movies? But then what's also some of our favorite items? We both love, we keep going back to like deep cut horror, which, we search for constantly, even now. Tourist Trap comes to mind. I know we really like that one. It's the weirdest, like late 70s, early 80s horror movie that I've ever seen. And, sometimes we'll see a movie that's just really weird or obscure like that. It's like, we got to find something in this that we can put in the stores. So like there's one place that makes patches. So it's like, okay, we have a Tourist Trap patch now. So at least we have something in the shop for that. The Stuff by Larry Cohen from 1985, which is just a crazy, horror movie. That's actually having its 40th anniversary this year, so hopefully we can show that somewhere.
That's cool.
Yeah, I love some of the deep cut ones. There's Hardware from Richard Stanley comes to mind. That's a pretty cool one. I love The Car from 1977.
That one's a classic.
It's killing me. I can't remember the director's name right now. I love that movie. When we were going to the Carolina Theater, when they would show old horror movies, but they also show trailers for old horror movies too. And when we saw the trailer for The Car, if you watch the trailer, the movie looks horrible and ridiculous. Like, oh my God, we
would all laugh.
The whole audience laughed. Like, this is ridiculous. That was a real movie. But then we found it later at some point and we watched it, like, oh my God, this is actually
a James Brolin movie, man.
No, I was just gonna say, it's actually a stacked cast if you look at it in hindsight. It's James Brolin, John Marley, Elizabeth Thompson, like,
I know,
it's got some big names.
I know, and it's actually like, wow, this is actually really well written, and they're all committed to it. And James Brolin was such a stud back then, and all stuff like that, But no, it's just like asking like what's our favorite horror movies. That's something that we could spend all.
That's such a hard.
Fair. Yeah.
Obviously,
I like to throw those toughies in there for everybody. I get an author on here. I'm like, "What's your favorite book?" I get somebody that deals with horror movies. I ask them, "What's your favorite one?" Like,
right.
But as far as like some of but asking us like, "What's your favorite item that we have in our shop?" It's like asking your favorite child. It's like, well, no, I mean every single thing that we have in our store, no matter how big or small, no matter how inexpensive or expensive, I mean every single thing was chosen with a lot of care and thought, thinking, okay, we'll try, I'm going to try this shirt. We love this T-shirt. Hopefully we'll have some fans. Like we just found like a Death Becomes Her T-shirt that we really like, and they're not all horror T-shirts. Some are just funny, we
sarcastic.
Just sarcastic, because I always tell people the two most important words in our name are and more, because we also carry some stuff that'll just put a smile on your face. We have stuff from Pee-wee and Dolly Parton. They're not horror, but they're just they make us smile. We just think they're great.
Absolutely.
And we have some stuff from Princess Bride, and we have we're constantly looking for Spaceballs. Spaceballs,
everything.
Spaceballs, the mug. Spaceballs, the keychain. Spaceballs, the greeting card. We had Spaceballs, the mug, and it sold out. So
wow.
But that's the thing. That's just every single thing in there. It's just like, okay, well, this is something that we like, and this is something somebody else will like, and so.
True. Yeah.
Yeah,
I get your point. Yeah. You guys do say on your site that you're more than just like vendors, you are curators to
yeah.
spooky stuff. So that definitely does emphasize that point. It brings it to a whole other level. And that's really cool. I mean, you guys are definitely very not only passionate about it, but you've got a good eye for things because you can go into any spirit of Halloween and you get Friday the 13th and, the Nightmare on Elm Street and the basics and stuff like that. But you guys definitely are better about getting a little bit for everybody because I've seen stuff on your website that I was just like, it blows my mind every time that I look on there. I'm just seeing more and more stuff that I'm like, I need that. Like, and now I got taxes coming back, and I'm like, I need that too. Like,
Right.
I went on your website for like an hour this afternoon, and I was sitting there. I was like, how much of this stuff can I do in budget right now? Like,
yeah, and it's
business
great.
expense. We'll say that it's all part of a business expense. Research, right?
Right, totally. Yeah, this is all research, man. Yeah. I mean, people on the show. I got to reach my audience. We have plenty of cryptid stuff. There's Bigfoot stuff. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of all sorts of points that go right back to what you're doing. So I think that's a valid explanation.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of overlap in that in the horror community around here and everything like that. So it's cool, and I'm glad to get to have a chance to talk to you guys. On that note, when we're talking about community, one of the best parts about what you're doing that I really, really thought was super cool, and I wanted to ask you more about, is you guys do a lot to not only because you want to show movies and things like that. And one way you've been doing that is you've actually been working and networking with other like parts of the local community. You were talking about you had done, a showing at Criterion. You've done ones at the Grand. Well, I saw that recently you did The Craft with Bangor Pride. How was that? That sounded like a wicked fun time. Great movie.
Yeah, so we started in January. We just started doing because our space isn't very big. But we just started doing like just casual hangout movie nights just at our shop because we have a big screen TV mounted on the wall. So we always have either horror movies playing or like
it's not that big
it's not
compared
that
to
big.
current standards.
Okay,
we don't have like a 70 or 80 incher,
okay. It's
but
a nice sized TV mounted on the wall that always plays horror movies throughout the day.
That's awesome.
So but the thing is, and we don't charge admission for it or anything because it's really just meant to be a hangout thing. So, but because our space is small, we'll make a post about it and we'll say, but please RSVP, please email us, let us know. So we kind of have to cap it just to keep it safe
for capacity.
Yeah, for capacity purposes. So we started just doing like January did Jacob's Ladder, and then February we did My Bloody Valentine, and then March we did Rawhead Rex. And so Bangor Pride actually reached out to us and they're like, hey, we want to do one of these hangout nights with you guys. And we're like, oh, okay, yeah, absolutely. And, we kind of came up with a list of suggestions for different movies and they picked The Craft. And so, Sam, who was one of the people who runs Bangor Pride, helped us out by, getting the posts out there and just getting people to RSVP via email. So we did that. So we did two. We did Sunday afternoon and a Monday night. And we
were just going to do the one night and then it filled up very fast. So we said, well, do you guys want to do another night? We'll come back the next night and do it again. So we kind of had an overflow night. So, and that also was appreciated for them. So that was good.
Wow, that's super cool. That sounds wicked fun. It's just a neat thing to do in general. I haven't ever seen somebody put on something like that. It's neat.
Yeah, because part of what we do is like Nick said, we have movies on during the day, while we're open that are playing on the TV. So when people are walking around, because it's really cool because we get to have, half the fun is really getting to have conversations with people, right? You'll have people who will walk in and they'll see something that's from like the 70s or 80s. And they're like, oh man, I get to hear the coolest stories. I have one guy who's like, oh man, I was on my first date with, my wife and, back then, and, we were like 18 and in high school and we saw this movie And I didn't know how it was going to go, but wow, decades later we're married. So I guess she didn't break up with me. So, or even just getting to have the conversations, one of my favorites is actually An American Werewolf in London. Cause my intro to horror was, we had the making of Michael Jackson's Thriller on beta. I'm the youngest of four kids.
Cool.
And so my dad definitely recorded a lot of stuff off TV. And so I obsessively watched that because the music video scared the crap out of me. The werewolf part scared the crap out of me. But I feel like that's actually one of the best ways to get introduced to horror, because immediately after you get to watch the making of, you go step by step and they're showing you like, this is how this is fake. This is how this is fake, but this is how we made it look real and scare the crap out of you. And I'm like, yeah, that's great.
That's a good way. Yeah.
Yeah. So, they're always talking about American Werewolf in London, since that's actually what really inspired how they made the video. You get the director, the makeup guy, even the original composer from the movie to come work on the music video. And so I was like, what is this movie? I have to find this movie. So American Werewolf in London has always been a favorite of mine. And, and I grew up with practical effects and puppetry and, Jim Henson kids. So getting to watch them make creatures and make these things look a certain way has always been that, I will die on that hill topic for me. So when I have people come in and, we'll get into practical effects conversations, we'll get into, inspiration conversations. And even just the other day, there's a movie that came out, I can't remember, it was early 80s. It's called Possession, that had Sam Neill in it, a young Sam Neill, way before he was in Jurassic Park. But it was this, and it's this really, really weird movie. I'm not going to lie. And I had a girl who was in there the other day, and I made a bold decision. It was kind of quiet. So I was like, I'm going to throw this on. It's fine. It gets a little weird at times, but we'll see what happens. And I had a woman come in, and she was probably in her early 20s. And she was kind of very quietly perusing around the store. And then she asked me, she's like, what is this movie? And I told her all about it. I said, yeah, it gets kind of crazy at sometimes. So it was actually kind of funny but she was genuinely interested in it. She wanted to go look it up. 2 days later, she actually brought a friend with her, and I had Howard the Duck on. And I had to tell her, I said, well, this is also a pretty weird movie. It gets pretty weird. It's maybe a little less weird than the one I showed you the other day. So even just getting to introduce people to these things that have no idea about it, or again, getting to show people things that they're like, oh, I've always wondered about that. Rawhead Rex is a perfect example. One of our artists, her husband is a huge Clive Barker fan. So she's like, we've always wanted to see this movie, but we never have. So we're totally going to come watch it with you guys.
Oh yeah.
So we want to, we saw a lot of really cool stuff, and we know what, bird with a crystal plumage is, but there are a lot of people who look at the shirt, they're like, I don't know what that is. And so we're like, well, let's watch the movie, let's watch this movie. And so you have an awareness of what that is, or the reference of it, or even to see if you like it. Cause that's seriously what, was done for us back when we were in North Carolina at the Carolina Theater. And we had never heard of Zombie. We had never seen Zombie. So after we saw it, we're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Wolfen, oh my gosh, what is this movie? Yep. Albert Finney's in it. What? We'll watch that movie. And, so, and it's really great because we love watching these movies still, and we love getting the chance to, show it to other people. And then, we even get to ask people when we had people show up for Jacob's Ladder, had never seen it before. I'm like, what'd you think? They're like, I really liked it. That was really interesting. Like, yeah. So
the experience for sure.
Right. Exactly. So it really is. And then especially too, so it's really, really a big thing for us for doing the community building. Like you said, like there's already a really good spooky horror community here in Maine. We've had a lot of people who have actually, that are not immediately in Bangor, but they come from out of town, and they'll come see us every few weeks, and they're very appreciative that we're here. And so they tell us, but it's just really nice to get to kind of relish in that and have that community, and bring those people together, but then also bring more people into it, that they just would never think to see this movie or see something a different way. And then once they get into it, they're like, oh yeah, no, this is great. So it's really been a great journey for us so far, getting to do that.
That's so cool. That's so cool. You guys are definitely doing a lot of good things in that work, and I think that the community will appreciate it. It's just one of those things we don't have a lot out there around here to do at certain times of year. So to have a place like what you're doing that actually is trying to build a community within a community, it's wicked cool. And I think that that's definitely going to be an important part of like just Maine and just continuing to develop and grow businesses and stuff is going to rely on a lot of that. Speaking more on things you guys are doing, I see that you have a Goth Prom coming up over at the Next Generation Theater. I played there with my last band. Cool little place. I really like it. How's the Goth Prom sounding? That sounds like a really fun idea.
Yeah, it's mostly Kaddie's idea. I can't take much credit for it, but we've been even before we opened the shop, she had this idea of doing this, and we wanted to do something akin to like throwing a party, but of course, our place is not conducive for that.
Sure.
And so this was the perfect kind of opportunity to do it. And once we came upon the Next Generation Theater and they had the perfect space for it, it was just a case of like, all right, let's do this. Let's give people an opportunity to dress up in just their favorite goth attire and go to a place where they can, dance and socialize and just have a good time for a few hours. So it's we've got a photographer lined up who will be there, who will take goth prom style photos for those who
wow.
want. So it's optional, but if you want to, she'll be there and she'll provide a link where you can purchase whichever photos you want to get later. And Next Generation has their own, just a cash bar with just beer, wine, and sodas and stuff. So that'll be.
But we'll have some. We're gonna have snacks
and
stuff like that though too. I mean, it's not gonna be like a whole full blown dinner or anything like that, especially because it's gonna be in the the evening. So, but we'll have some snacks and stuff like that, and then just some dancing and stuff like that. I'm putting the playlist together.
Cool.
Of just like different industrial and I mean, of course, plenty of Bauhaus and stuff like that. So it's just a good reason to come on and get your hard dance on with your black lipstick on and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so awesome.
And I know that you just spoke not too long ago with Jeffrey, who is going to run the Maine paranormal and horror.
Yeah. Just had a conversation with him a week or so ago.
Yeah, and so funny enough, we will be there too. We're one of the vendors.
Awesome.
So we'll have a table set up because we've never done anything in Augusta before. And so we'll be there. But Jeffrey reached out to us, so he's going to offer, I think, about 4 weekend passes that we will raffle off while we're at the Goth Prom. So anybody who comes in and buys a ticket, we'll give you a raffle ticket as well. So while you're there, you could also end up winning a weekend pass to the. So I think it'll be 4. So and Jeffrey will be there. Unless things change, but he's planning on being there himself to attend the Goth Prom. So at least have that. We're still trying to figure out what maybe we may also raffle an item from the store as well. Just trying to sort that out. So it's quite the adventure. We've never done anything quite like this before. Not since planning our own wedding reception have we actually thrown a party like this size. And so it's so we'll see how it goes because and you're familiar with Next Generation Theater. They can they can fit about 120 some odd people comfortably there. So we'll see how many folks show up, but it's on April 26th from 7 to 10. Tickets are $20. You can either come by our shop and purchase them, or you can just purchase them at the door. We're not doing it through our website because we just didn't want to have people pay extra fees or anything like that. And
all ages are welcome. This is we are advertising this as a family friendly event. It's not it's, obviously there's gonna be loud music and stuff like that. So you'll want to, don't bring a toddler or baby or something. but we know that there are plenty of people who, they're like, oh, well, maybe bring my teenagers or something like that or anything like that.
Right.
We're like, absolutely, this is
That sounds like a fun time.
Very comfortable environment, where this is not for, we're not going to have any kind of crazy debauchery or anything like that. This is a safe space for folks. So
yeah, no, that sounds like a wicked fun time. And it is cool to do because honestly, like, the way you're framing it as like a family friendly thing, I could just imagine, bringing my teenager. I've got a 14-year-old. I could just imagine wearing my old goth clothes from high school and going to dance to the stuff that I used to listen to in high school. It'd probably blow their mind. But it could be an amazing experience. That sounds wicked fun. That's such a cool idea. I really I'm just grinning ear to ear just thinking of how cool the whole thing is. It's so fun, and I really appreciate you guys doing stuff like that because it's just such a neat idea. God, man, I can't sing enough praises about what you're doing. I just think it's such a cool thing. Okay. Shifting gears a little bit because I want to ask you guys because I have everybody on here, and you know what my podcast is mostly about. It's about talking about weird stuff up here in Maine. Yeah. So I want to ask you: have either of you seen anything or had any experiences yourselves?
I don't know. Our running joke is that Kaddie's been all over the state because of her former job with WABI, and I never leave the house.
That's right. You don't get out much.
But I would just for me personally, I think I won't make anything up, but I will say I would say for me though, when we were like house hunting, because when we first moved here, we just rented a house for a little bit. And then we got to that point where like, okay, we're ready to buy a place. So we were house hunting in Bangor and the surrounding areas. And you learn real quick. It's like not a lot of the houses around here are very old and some are kind of quirky. So just in our house hunting adventures and going into different basements, and it's like, why does this basement just have this creepy empty room that's like partially walled off, and you just have the feeling that something really bad at some point, something bad must have happened in here, or there'll just be a random toilet in the basement that's still fully functioning, and you're wondering like, why is this here? For me, it's just like finding a lot of the really weird, quirky just places, just from trying to find a house that in a town that's over 150 some odd years old, and some houses are still that way, and they haven't been changed all that much. So I did also, I guess for me, the other thing is I did get to spend some time over at Fort Knox because
that's fun.
The first summer I was here, I was in a production of As You Like It for $10 Theater, and they do a week or so of shows at Fort Knox every summer. So just getting to spend a week there, especially in the evening when it starts to get dark, and you just kind of get to hang out amongst those halls of stone and the history that it has there. I never really felt creeped out or anything. I was really more in awe of the place.
Yeah,
I know they have their own ghost tours that they do now and again. So really just that. So for me, no paranormal stuff, but just a lot of just getting to see these old places that have so much history, and of course going on the Mount Hope Ghost Tour was fun too. So, but I don't know, I'll let Kaddie talk because she's the one that's actually traveled all over the state more than I have. So
look here, you're keeping me up real big here.
Well, you did the story of the Criterion, though.
Well, yeah. I mean, like that's pretty on point. I mean, getting to do the ghost story stuff. So getting, we were chatting about earlier, getting to do the stuff at the Criterion and Bar Harbor, and then doing the Nellie Butler stuff and Sullivan. When I did that a couple years ago around Halloween, that was pretty cool. And I mean, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, because I have been around more, and I've gotten to spend time in a lot of interesting places. whether it is, an older building, or even a newer building or something.
Yeah.
It's been kind of neat. Even when I was in Ellsworth one time, they've got that old, used to be the police station. It's like the old, like,
Yep.
Sheriff's office or whatever it is, that old house and stuff, and having the jail downstairs and stuff like that. So, so I've been in a lot of really neat places, but I think one of the things that really was consistent for me and really struck me is the skyscapes up here. I'm a big outdoors person of just like, one of my favorite things is I grew up in a small town in North Carolina. One of my favorite things to do was just hang out outside and just look at the sky. And I would take pictures of the moon and, like see all the cloud formations and such. And, one of the things I've been really struck by since moving to Maine is the cloud patterns, even during the day. And you'll see ones that just look like shredded feathers, in the sky. And then especially when I first worked for the station, I used to be a associate producer for the morning news. So I had to go into work at 2:30 in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
And we're right near, we live right near the airport. And so I actually used to drive on Odland, past the airport every morning, and just that clearing where a lot of the planes come in over 95. I would sometimes just pull over for a quick second on my way to work and snap a couple pictures, because even the sky at 2:15, 2:20 in the morning, you'd see some of the neatest cloud formations and just skyscapes. So I think that's been one of my favorite. It's like one of my favorite, but like also kind of the eeriest things that can really be like enchanting, but also terrifying at the same time.
I absolutely understand that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I hate to get serious for a minute, but I actually was covering Lewiston when that happened. So,
oh, wow.
So the night after that whole thing happened, when they actually didn't know where Robert Card was, they were still searching for him. And so they had that whole showdown at a family member's house.
Yeah.
I was out there doing camera work. So I was being the photographer for Brittany, who was the anchor with me. And so just even that night was so strange. Like that whole day, right? That whole day is really weird. Your mind's kind of messed up because you're in the middle of covering an actual real, the stuff I've seen in all my movies, right? Like it's like being in the middle of Scream. You're like, holy crap, what am I, Gail Weathers? Jesus. And you're now actually going to this thing. And I remember sitting in the car in Lewiston, we just passed by this huge thing of news vehicles, like international outlets and stuff like that. Like, oh, look, there's Lester Burnham. No big deal.
Right.
And I'm parked and we're trying to figure out what our next move is, because we just left downtown. We had just done a live hit from downtown and we saw police cars like whoosh by us. So we like get in the car, we start following the cops, and then that trail burned out real fast. So I pulled over, and I still have the pictures on my phone, but I remember, of course, first thing I look at, because I'm letting Brittany kind of figure out where we're going to go next. We're making phone calls. I'm making phone calls. She's making phone calls to figure out where we should go next. But I look out the window and up at the moon and this clouds, and I'm like, God, it's terrifying. How like it's something right out of every werewolf movie I've ever seen. And I'm like, well, that's unsettling. Already kind of unsettled in this situation, but that's even more unsettling. And then by the time we get out to the middle of, nowhere in Bowdoin, at that house, same thing. We're all in the middle of the darkness and just looking up at the sky. I'm like, oh, wow, super eerie. But that's probably the closest thing I could come to it. And it's been a consistent thing where it's like the skyscapes around here. It's either absolutely enchanting or absolutely terrifying.
I absolutely can relate to that. Honestly, I've always said that there's something about the Maine skies that just draws your eyes to them.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why we have like more UFO sightings than a lot of other places do. I've always said that was kind of a hypothesis of mine, is for some weird reason, people, when they're here, they just tend to want to look at the skies more and they notice more. And what you're saying about that, the horrible tragedy down in Lewiston and having all of that, happening in that day. It's like, I think that there's this thing that like people seem to like have like, it's like in instances like that where it's like traumatic, but at the same time you have to be engaged
Oh yeah.
that like it's almost like you disassociate. It's like an out of body experience sometimes,
It
and
really
those sort of
was.
things. It's
Yeah.
wild. The whole thing with like looking at the skies, though, we really in northern Maine and just in Maine in general. If you haven't been here before, and most of the listeners, the show probably want to come here but haven't had a chance yet. These skies are truly unlike anything you'll see elsewhere in the world. It's really incredible. We have the first dawn. That's why we were called the Dawn Land. Every day starts off with something that no one else in the world can really see in the same way. So our skies are something special. And that's why, I think that here we have such a low light pollution. We have a really kind of clean environment comparatively to a lot of other places. So it might allow for like the atmosphere might have a little bit more juice to it or something. I don't know what it is. It seems to have a little extra mojo up here, and it really shows. It's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, it really is. I'm with you on that. I mean, again, like growing up in the middle of nowhere in North Carolina, which is can be pretty dark, and even going to the Outer Banks, and
Mhm.
living in Colorado for a little bit, and even in like Northern Virginia and the mountains and the Shenandoah Valley and such. It's really something. When I came up here, it's something I noticed right away. I'm just like, gosh, this is really striking.
Yeah, Colorado does seem beautiful though, and so does North Carolina.
Oh
I
yeah.
see recently they're having a lot of wildfires down there right
It's
now,
awful.
right?
Western North Carolina is having an awful time right now. And
Yeah.
Nick and I actually lived in Asheville when we first got married.
Oh wow.
I have family in Asheville, and actually one of our earring artists is out of Asheville. She's a friend of ours that was running an art shop there. They went. I mean, it was seriously 6 months later that they had the flooding, where they had a hurricane come to the mountains and flood and demolish so much that 6 months later, now it's wildfires. It's absolutely, it's something that, again, it's like something out of like a 90s catastrophe movie that
Yeah,
we've seen many times before.
for
It's like,
sure.
really, that's really happening.
It's how it feels sometimes. You watch the news and stuff, and it's like, oh, we just had a once in a century storm. Well, here's once in a century wildfires right behind it before
Right.
people really even have a chance to regrow their roots and try and recover. And
Yeah.
it's horrible and tragic. And it's just my thoughts go out to the people down there. Do you have family still in the area, or
Yeah, I
yeah?
do. I have
Oh
so
man.
my dad actually grew up in Asheville. My grandparents moved to Asheville in 1956, 57, something like that. It was the late 50s. My dad was only a few years old, and because my grandfather was originally from Greensboro, North Carolina.
Oh yeah.
But my grandfather, this was back in oh gosh, what year was this? 40s, 50s. He's from Greensboro, North Carolina, and he went to undergrad at the University of North Carolina, and he is going to medical school. He says, "Oh, I'm going to go to medical school out west." Well, he went to Northwestern in Chicago, so that's not very west, but
Yeah, not that west.
grew up in a small town in North Carolina. He thought he went pretty west, and it's like, no, he just went to Chicago. So, and my grandmother's from Iowa, so they met in Chicago, and but they bought a house on a mountain, because you could easily do that back then. So the family house is still there. My aunt lives there now with my uncle. But they're actually on a mountain, 10 minutes from town. So, and you can see right into Tennessee, like from the kitchen window. So yeah, we still have family, there. And then even friends of ours, like from doing theater and stuff like that are still, up and down that highway, that some have been evacuated and then they get back home, but that they're still seeing, the clouds and stuff like that from the wildfires. So
yeah. I mean, I remember we had, a few years ago when Canada was having really severe wildfires
right.
up north,
Oh
and the
gosh.
smoke here was you could barely breathe, and I couldn't
I
imagine
remember that
being
too.
only a few miles away from it, let alone in the same town. That's just it's awful. And my thoughts go out to the people. I hope for the best in this situation, because it's just been so much in such a short period of time.
It's unreal, especially in an area that hardly has to worry about stuff like that. So the worst thing is the big snowstorms in April or something like that. These
geez.
unheard of things happen.
Yeah, that's just what we need is an ice storm or something like that. Geez, knocking on wood. I don't even want to say it, but
Yeah.
so switching gears to something more positive before we wrap it up, I want to ask you guys, what's next for you? Do you have any plans? You doing anything special after the Goth Prom, or do you have any things on the agenda coming up?
Well, let's see. We want to, we certainly want to host more movie nights outside of our shop. We'd love to go, like go back to the Criterion in Bar Harbor at some point. We want to, and definitely want to get into a new, or new to us movie theater, in a different town. We're just not sure which one yet. To keep trying to bring some of the deep cuts out, and plus it gets us out of the community too. We like to it's nice to get out of Bangor once in a while and just try to go into a different place to just meet people. So we're just trying to see like where else we can go and do that. I know that we'll also we'll have a table set up, but when Bangor or Pride does their whole event in June, so we'll be a part of that. And let's see what else is there.
Right now, it's mostly there's been another couple businesses in Ellsworth that I've been chatting with about maybe doing some movie nights with them to kind of just engage their audience and again just let people know that we're a thing in different towns. And we really are also trying to see what other events that we could do with film. One of my big projects right now, and I'm still trying to see if I can find a venue for it. Whether it's in Bangor or somewhere else in the area. I'm trying to see if I can get somebody to work with us to do a showing of Jaws. Because it's the 50th anniversary of the release, and like guys, we have like what did Matt tell us? The third largest shoreline in the whole country or something.
Yeah.
We have so much shoreline in our state of Maine that we could just pop up a screen and say, hey, look, there's the ocean. Let's watch Jaws.
Yeah, that would be so cool. Especially if you could do something like that in some place like down in Bar Harbor or something like that. I think that would really hit.
Yeah, exactly. Because I know that I've always wanted that kind of experience, and we keep seeing other places on the water that do stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, that would be amazing to do that. But other than that, trying to just see who else will work with us to do more stuff like that. And then we are going to definitely partner up again with the Bangor Historical Society with their annual movie in Mount Hope Cemetery. So we are going to do that again with them this year. And they've been gracious enough to they said they talked to the committee. They're going to let us set up the table this year. So we are going to sponsor their film that they're going to end up doing. So that's good. So yeah, and even cool. Too, I had a really good conversation with them the other day, and I'm really hoping that we can do some more stuff in the area to just build up the spooky. Because honestly, and like you said, you already know this, but and we already kind of felt it before we opened the shop. But really, this past fall, after we opened the shop, we had folks from all over that would stop in our shop, and they're like, "Hey, we came here. Where's the spooky?" Right? Like they'll come here for the SK tours, or they will come from. We have people that come from Salem to Bangor, or they'll bypass Salem to come to Bangor.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. So we're really trying to see what we can do, because there's so many opportunities to do so many more cool things up here for stuff, and people are seriously looking for it. So
yeah, absolutely, it's definitely a market for it. The people around here are all about it, and I'm pretty sure the people coming from away, they kind of expect it. I remember years ago, I was down in Old Orchard Beach visiting. And I met somebody who was from Australia. And the first thing that they asked me when they found out that I was from here is they were like, well, where do you keep all the werewolves? Like, what are you talking about, man? And he's like, well, over in Australia, all we hear about this place is like, it's like Transylvania, right? He's like, you got ghosts and vampires and werewolves and all that stuff. I was like, yeah, absolutely. But you're not supposed to know about it.
I love it.
But yeah, it's one of those things. And I think that with what you're doing and stuff like that, with your community outreach, the work that you're doing, and just having that centralized location for just all things good and spooky, I think it's definitely like we're coming into a new era in this state where I think horror is really going to take a center stage for a lot of the community and stuff like that. And it's so fun. I think that people recently, I was talking to somebody recently about this, and maybe you guys have thoughts on it. I think when people kind of have been reading so much awful stuff in the news, and the day to day is so like, horrific in its own way. I think a lot of people kind of look to horror and spooky things as a kind of an outlet to kind of divert attention away from that thing. And it seems like that's kind of led to a whole new reawakening to where you're seeing more horror movies being created that are getting more success than they would have probably 10 years ago. You're seeing more like acts, you're seeing more integration in other types of media where it's becoming more mainstream and more acceptable than when it was probably 20, 30 years ago to be into niche horror movies and things like that. And nowadays it's like, when I'm walking through Walmart, I'm probably going to see at least one person that's wearing like a, I don't know, a Scream t-shirt or something like that, where 10 years ago, I never would have thought to see such a thing. Do you guys think that might be just a sign of the times, or are we riding a wave right now?
I think that, in my humble opinion, it's, horror never goes out of style. I think that.
Good answer.
Yeah, it's just it's always around. I think horror movies, teach us how to deal with the horrors of real life. They going back to the 80s, or the whole cliche of the final girl. But what is the final girl but someone who's tough and resourceful and
Right.
outsmarts the monster? That's it. That's what the greatest horror movies are really all about. It's about being strong. And I think that the other thing is, then the reason why, too, it's like I do think, if we talk about movies that have been just made in the last 10 years, horror has come a long way. I don't believe in the idea of elevated horror, but I do think that you look at the horror movies of the last 10 years and just how inventive they've become and creative, and asking deeper questions and whatnot. And I think that and one thing we've learned about horror fans, and being fans ourselves and going to all these conventions, once you become a fan of horror, when you're like in middle school and you watch those first couple of horror movies, the thing about horror, when you become a true fan of horror, you want to see all of it. We'll meet teenagers who are wearing Ghostface shirts because they don't care if the original Scream was 1996. They don't see that as an old movie. They just want to see something cool. You just want to see all of it. And so it all just exists in this one big, wonderful collection. And when we go to horror conventions, you can go to a convention where you meet the cast from Return of the Living Dead from 40 years ago. They're attending the same convention as the people who were in the Terrifier movies, which are only a couple of years old. And you can go to a convention where you can meet, Barbara Crampton at one table, and the young lady who played, Megan, whose name I can't remember right now. I feel bad about that. But that's the thing. It all exists together. There's no sense of like, oh, well, that's an old movie, so it's not cool. Horror fans are not like that. They watch.
Oh, yeah. They never age. They never really go out of style.
Yeah. So I think that it's just, it's just now, I think it's just, and maybe the internet has something to do with it too, where horror fans can just connect more and talk about that stuff more. But yeah, I just think that I don't think it's a wave or a fad. I just think that it's just better than ever right now.
Really? Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. Is that it's really just kind of like piggybacking off what Nick was saying. It's not necessarily that there are more of it. It's just that you have more accessibility to other people that can share in that now, right? You have people you can connect with so much easier on the internet and on all sorts of other platforms that you can say, oh my gosh, I loved this movie. And then you find like 6 other people that you'd never thought were going to say the same thing. They're like, oh my gosh, I love that too. Even though you thought you're the only person who saw that movie, you'll find people. I mean, we're on a couple of groups on Facebook, and it's neat, like horror movie addicts and stuff. And somebody just the other day, somebody was like, I'm looking for this specific type of movie. Give me what you got. And you see the different, you'll have a thread where you see some of the same suggestions, but then there'll be people that come out of left field with completely different suggestions. And kind of what you were saying, I have always felt, I mean, and Nick and I are perfect examples of it, right? Like we grew up in broken homes. We had not ideal childhoods and all that crap, but you know, we escaped into these things. We had, you know, the movies were there for us when other things in our life weren't. And so we've always, I think we as a civilization and as a humanhood have always looked have at horror, those who choose to deal with it that way. There are some that just don't choose to deal with it that way. They don't want to face it for one reason or another, and that's their prerogative. But there's a huge, you know, there's always been a huge group of people who choose to deal with it that way, whether it is that they are absorbing it or that they are creating it, that they're writing, that they're directing, that they're doing anything like that. I've always seen horror as an outlet one way or another. And I just think it's just a new wave, right? It's a new wave of problems that we're facing. It's a new government. It's a new economy. It's a new, you know, it's a new wave of things that we've been dealing with now. So now we just have new formats and new stories to tell to deal with that. But I think it's great. I mean, I think that even in the last 30 years, you know, that really, especially too, ever since Silence of the Lambs, you know, went up for the Oscars and stuff like that, you know, that it has been, you know, they still shaft the horror genre a lot, but
every time.
But at the same time, I do feel like there are still a lot more people that are at least branching into it and doing more with it. I've been delighted. Oz Perkins stuff has been a huge heartwarming thing for me. I am a huge Psycho fan. So American Werewolf in London is one of my favorites, but I am such a huge Hitchcock fan, and I saw Psycho when I was a kid. And I actually used to go to Universal Studios when I was younger, and
same.
Yeah, and you get to do the whole Hitchcock experience, and they walk you through how they did the shower
the house
scene.
up on the hill there that you could go up to.
That they actually used in those sequels. Yeah.
Yes.
So
it's so cool.
Oh, it's so amazing. So I was delighted when I, you know, and I actually have a tattoo of Anthony Perkins from Psycho on my arm because I love that movie so much, and I love Anthony Perkins. And even that last scene is just, it sticks with you no matter who you are or where you're from. But Oz Perkins is Anthony Perkins' son. Who, you know, just did all sorts of other things. I mean, he was actually, like, the first thing I remember him in was Legally Blonde, of all things. He was a character actor in that. But even the Oz Perkins stuff that's been coming out in the last several years, I've been delighted that he's riding his wave of success with doing horror stuff. And actually his brother, Elvis Perkins, who is a musician, did the soundtrack for Black Coat's Daughter. So I've been thinking it's like super heartwarming for me to see the Perkins boys, you know, kind of follow a little bit in their father's footsteps in the horror genre. So I've been tickled and delighted at all these things that have been coming out in the last few years when it comes to the genre. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's anything new in terms of, oh, this is a new way that people are dealing with it, but it is a you know, a story that we see over and over again, that it is a strong way for people to deal with reality. And we're just seeing new formats of it. And I think it's great.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a very good point you made. And I hadn't really thought of it in that way, that maybe it is just that we have more accessibility to connect with other people now compared to what we may have 10, 20 years ago. I mean,
we don't feel like we're weirdos anymore.
Right. You're a little more, I think everybody after the, you know, last few years are kind of like a little more comfortable with just being themselves, because what else do we have, really, you know? So that's a very, very, very good point. I appreciate both your insights on that. It was really good little tidbit of conversation. Well, hey, this almost wrap up the show, but I wanted to give you a chance to plug anything you guys have going on. I will, of course, be sharing the description for everybody in the comments in the description on YouTube. I will be sharing your link for your website and everything. But is there anything in particular you want people to be aware of going on, or anything you want to promote?
No, I know we discussed the Goth Prom. That's kind of our next big thing. Like, it's on April 26th over in Next Generation Theater in Brewer. So it's kind of like big thing that we know is set in stone. Otherwise, we just tell folks to, keep an eye on our website, keep an eye on our Facebook, Instagram, and we're playing around on Blue Sky as well.
If you don't use social media, we are also very good about updating our website for things.
Yeah.
So that includes our store hours. We're about to amp it up for, the season and such. So store hours are gonna expand. For now, it's getting warmer. We have more daylight and such. But even events that we have going on, and if there is something that pops up, we do post things on our actual website. We do maintain that. So I know there's folks that are absolutely avoiding social media at all costs. That's totally cool.
Understandable.
That's another way to keep up to date is actually our website. Nick and I, when we try to find the time between all the other things that we're doing right now, including being precious pug parents, we are trying to do some other stuff with, again, like you said, for folks that are not in Maine or can't get to Maine, but still even just want exposure to the media or what our shop is about. We keep trying to throw some ideas around about doing some little channel stuff of our own, either on YouTube or something like that at some point. And so just another way to get titles out there to people that would never think of a certain movie. So just check out our website and socials for that. But other than that,
we're on otherwise we're located on 22 State Street in Bangor. So just
come and say hello.
Come by and say hello.
Come and say hello. We're trying to do some stuff with some of our vendors during the summer too. We actually just got coffee in the shop, some ground coffee from Deadly Grounds. And so they're actually going to try to come up, I think, this summer, and I think we're going to try to do an event with them. So with some
wicked cool.
We're also going to work with Severin Films. That we actually, they're a vendor of ours, and of course they have a lot of deep cut stuff that they have in physical format. So we're actually working to see if we can set up something with them this summer. One of their regional guy actually vacations up here. So that's the other fun part too, is that we'll go talk to these people that are in completely different areas, and they're like, "Oh, I have a tie to Maine. Well, I'm going to come to Maine. I'll come by your shop." We're like, "That's great." So just definitely keep looped in with us for all the different stuff that we're trying to get for events and everything like that. Keep physical media alive.
Absolutely. Oh man, that's so important.
All that jazz.
Yes.
Listen to Acadia After Dark, all the stuff, so you can find out all the things that are going up here in Maine.
So go on an SK tour if you haven't done it before.
Heck yeah.
That's one I want to do. Actually, I just recently discovered their website.
They're the nicest people.
And
Jamie and Jennifer are the nicest people, and they know so much, and they're just really, really great people to support. I would book as soon as you got a date on the calendar, book it, man, because they fill up real fast.
I'm sure they do. It's probably a hot item.
Yeah, and they have people that come like every year to do the same tour because they're that great. So that's one of those things, and I'm sure every experience is probably different for those people if you ask them too, because that's kind of how Maine is, ain't it? Oh yeah.
Well, hey, I really appreciate you both coming on the show this week. It has been fantastic getting to meet you, getting to chat for a little bit. I really admire what you're doing. I think it's a great thing for the community. I think it's a great thing for Maine. I think it's a great thing for horror. I can't wait to see where you go from here. I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm going to be at that con in September, so I will definitely be seeing you there.
Oh, great.
I am going to be showing up at your shop sometime in the very near future, because there's just it's so close to me. I got to do it at some point here. Just get myself to leave my little den in the winter is really difficult, but now that it's getting warmer, I think I can build up the confidence to do it.
Look, if I just went to Ellsworth, twice in the last week to put out Goth Prom flyers, I think you can make it up.
You know what? You got me,
actually.
I think you're actually 100% right there. But anyways, I'm going to be putting your links down in the description. Any of the listeners that are in the area want to go and check out the Goth Prom coming up, it'll be April 26th. That sounds like an absolutely fantastic time. And I wanted to say thank you all for coming on the show. And as always,
thank you.
Thank you. And listeners, as always, this has been the Reverend Redbeard for Acadia After Dark. Y'all keep those lanterns lit out there and stay safe. We'll talk soon.